Good evening, everyone. My wife told me to take notes, so I didn't repeat myself. So we're going to attempt that tonight. I have notes here, and I brought this with me, but this is just to impress you. Just in case you wanted to know, this is the election law for the state of Illinois. And I've learned after a few years being in the county clerk's office that it was time for me to make some notes in it so I would know where to go again when the question was asked again, because I knew I wasn't going to remember the answer when somebody asked. So I have labeled a lot of things in here. Not that I know what they are, but my tabs do help a lot. So I just want to let you know that I do have a background here. I have been county clerk for 18 years and been proud of that too, actually. I have enjoyed the job. I have enjoyed the position. It's fun working with the public most of the time. It is fun working with employees most of the time. And I do enjoy myself when I do this. I like to speak, but at the same time, as my wife says, I ramble and I repeat myself. So if I start doing that, yell at me, throw something, whatever. But we're going to try to go over some of the election information tonight for you. First of all, the right to vote is where I wanted to start. The right to vote is the cornerstone of democracy. The voters are its custodians. And a right is frequently linked with responsibility. A responsibility is a task or trust for which a person is accountable. When the framers of the Illinois Constitution secured the right to vote for the citizenry, they recognized the individual's resulting responsibility to exercise that right. Now, this is a paragraph out of a booklet that the State Board of Elections released many years ago. And I use this statement and this information when I go to schools. And that is one other thing I really enjoy about my position when they ask us to come to the schools to do voter registration or to do some kind of a talk for government classes. We have one school in the county up until last year that they would call every semester and we would talk to each government class. And it's been fun. It's been a good thing to do. And we'd also give those students an opportunity to register to vote at that point. And they were typically seniors. So they were interested in what we had to say because they were going to be out in the public, or back out in the world, I should say. And they were ready to exercise their right to vote. The qualifications for voters in Illinois are simple. They're basically, you have to be 18 years old, you have to be a citizen of the United States, you have to be a resident of your precinct for 30 days, and you can register to vote, and then you're ready to go for the next election. We also have responsibilities well, I actually read that, responsibility for voting. The other thing I wanted to share with you a little bit was this upcoming election that we are in the middle of right now. And how many people here believe that we do elections more than one day or 2 days a year? If I could see anybody's hands. These two people do. They work in the county clerk's office. They know that. We do elections every day of the year. And that's not something people understand or realize we do. But we have voter registration files that we have to keep up. We have, and that's the majority of the work that we do day to day. But there's deaths, there's transfers, there's people transferring in the county, people transferring out of the county, and we have to deal with all of those different issues coming up. And once in a while, we have to prove that somebody lives in our county, or different things with elections. And the consolidated election that's coming up in April is the least attended election in any of the three elections in a 2-year period. The highest percentage since I've been in office was in 2005. We had a 35% turnout. That is very poor. The latest percentage was almost a 27% turnout in 2019. That's compared to a general election where we had 78% turnout in 2020 in November. And I'm not really sure why. Well, there are a lot of reasons why people do not vote in a consolidated election. who are not or who do not get interested in a consolidated election. And that's one of the reasons I said I would help do this tonight, because I want people to be interested in being candidates and getting involved in elections. The Chamber and Farm Bureau have done a great job trying to put something like this together for a few years. This one has finally worked for them, and I am glad to be part of it, because people need to understand that they need to be involved in their communities. You can't really get involved in Washington, D.C. by casting your vote on Election Day in November. But you can get involved in Effingham, in Mason, in Shumway, in Beecher City, in Watson Township, in all of these different areas of the county, in our county, and then everybody else's county, there's the same issues. You can get involved by voting in those elections or becoming a candidate. And when you become a candidate, that's just icing on the cake, really, in my eyes, because you just get a chance to. I can't find this other sheet of paper I was looking for. That's not good. Here it is. In Effingham County, we have. I'm just going to list this really quickly because I think it's important for people to understand. And of course, what I know about is Effingham County. I could tell you about Fayette County. I can tell you about Shelby County and Clay County, but I really don't know about those counties. I can tell you about Effingham County. We have 15 townships, 9 county board districts, 2 state representative districts, 2 state senatorial districts, 1 U.S. Congress district, 10 municipalities, 10 school districts, 5 that are housed their home bases in Effingham County, 14 fire protection districts, 4 park districts, 3 drainage districts, 1 water district, 1 library district, and 37 voting precincts. And the 37 voting precincts, those are where each of us vote, where we go to place or cast our ballot, and those that is our home precinct. In those 30, that's the precinct that is our home, where we go within our area to vote. And within the precinct, there's not a lot of different officers there, but the precinct committeeman is elected every 2 years. And then from there, you go on up to the largest district we have in the county. Specific to the county would be the county itself, of course, which I represent as county clerk. But other than that would be the county board districts, the next size. But each person in the county gets to vote on everything from their precinct committeeman all the way up to President of the United States at some time during the 2-year period that contains 3 elections. So in the even-numbered years, we have the general election. We have the general primary election in March, and we have the general election in November. And in the even-numbered years, every 4 years, we elect our governor and our state offices. In the other, every 4 years, in the even-numbered years, we elect the president and federal officers. And then in the odd-numbered years is when we elect our local candidates. And these local candidates are those people that I just mentioned, that are township officers, municipalities, school districts. We actually only have 1 fire protection district in Effingham County that elects. So that park districts, all of those things are on the ballot in the odd-numbered years. And this is set by statute, by Illinois state statute, and in this little red book I showed you. And it's important for us to get out and do this. If you're looking to be a candidate or you are a candidate, there are a lot of things for you to consider. But the major thing to consider is, do you have an interest? Do you have an interest in your local government? Do you have an interest in that water district? Or do you have an interest in, water district's not a good example for our county, I shouldn't have said that. But do you have an interest as a precinct committeeman and a precinct committeeman's job is to rally the party faithful. It's a party position for our elections. But do you have an interest in bettering the county, being on the county board? or bettering the township, being a township trustee, or a park district member, or even a school board member. You know, school board members don't get paid. Everybody else gets a stipend of some kind, I'm pretty sure, but the school board districts do not, those people on those school district boards. So, and school board members, they do a lot of work, as do all of these people. But as a candidate, you have the opportunity to make it work for your citizenry, for your neighbors, for your people you live around, to help things work out. Whether you have issues with somebody in particular, or if they have issues with something in particular within your district, you have an opportunity as a candidate or as a trustee, a board member, or whatever it might be, to affect what goes on that board and goes on in that district. The odd-numbered years, as I said, is a consolidated election. Typically, there's 2 elections that year too. In Effingham County, normally we only have 1 because we don't normally have a primary. A primary election for a consolidated election has some different rules to it than a primary election for on the even-numbered years for the governors, the state races, or the federal offices. So we don't have normally a primary in the consolidated years. The last year we did, I believe, was 2007, where we had a race in the city of Effingham we had to have a primary for. And so typically we have just 1 election. So that's why I always claim 3 elections in 2 years instead of 4 elections in 2 years. And it makes me feel better to say it that way, I think. But for the consolidated election, that's where we can get involved. Not that you can't get involved in the other elections, but where we can get involved as just individuals, as people who want to see things happen in our areas. I read a statistic today, and I've got it here in my book somewhere, that 45% of tax dollars are spent at the local level. And when you vote for somebody to be your township trustees or your township supervisor or road commissioner, you're voting for somebody to spend your money, to spend your tax dollars. Or if you're voting for somebody for school board, you're voting for somebody to spend your tax dollars. And that's what it's all about. It's about running that entity, that governmental entity, making it run smooth, answering to people, answering to the public, having transparency, and all those things that we need to do. There are a number of like, as I said, different offices. I did want to read a letter here that was written in 2003, and it's a letter to the editor. And this is regarding citizens. And you are citizens. As citizens, you can vote. As citizens, you can encourage your board members, or your school board members, your township trustees, your county board members. But you also have that obligation to vote. And this was after the April 1st election in 2003, which was a consolidated election. The morning following the recent election, April 1st, we were visiting with a good friend, and conversation turned to election results and the low turnout of registered voters, less than 25%. These comments are not about patriotism, but about exercising a privilege we still have in the United States. We are engaged in a violent conflict, a war, if you will, with a country where terrorism has become a way of life for the people. We will have an obligation to these people after this conflict ends to show them that our form of government, although not perfect, offers a lot of good things and privileges. Among the privileges is the right to vote. Our system of government works because people offer themselves as candidates, people who in most cases feel they have something positive to offer and are willing to make sacrifices to serve if elected. Don't we have a privilege and obligation as registered voters to study candidates and issues and show up at the precinct and vote for our convictions? The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Election Day. If you would be willing to serve as an election judge, the county clerk would be happy to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and see you at the polls in the next election. This gentleman's name was Harold White. He has passed away since then. He was a lovely gentleman. I knew him many years, and then when I got to be county clerk, He and his wife were both election judges, and that's where he was writing that from, the standpoint of an election judge. And if anybody is interested in being an election judge, you can call us. That's something we're always needing. But I wanted to read that because it puts in perspective a lot of what our election law says. We have the right, we have the responsibility, and he called it an obligation to go out and vote. And it's not really up to the county clerk how many people come out to vote on election day. We get a lot of questions about how many people do you think will vote this time? Well, I predicted in November, which was of course wrong, 80%, but we got close. We got to 78. But we don't have, that's not our job. Our job is the conduct of the election. And the job of a candidate when it comes to election is to campaign, to let people know you're on the ballot, to let people know when the election is, and to encourage people to get out and vote. And I hope that we will be able to do that and have a higher turnout again this spring. Because the funny thing about it is, and not the funny thing necessarily, but the odd thing is, it costs the county or whoever runs the elections, and in Illinois it's the counties, or there are 8 election commissions. It costs the counties and commissions the same amount of money to run an election with a 35% turnout as it does with a 78% turnout. So it doesn't matter. We're still spending that money to make that election work. Citizens own all the local governments. This was from another publication, and this gentleman writes that there are 8,511 different local government bodies in the state of Illinois, and that is probably right. I didn't actually figure out how many Effingham County have. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 70, and that's plenty. Because what that does, especially in this kind of election, it causes what we call ballot styles. Ballot styles are fun, but they're kind of hard to get along with sometimes because you have to make sure every voter in the county gets to vote on everything they're allowed to vote on. If I live, and I do live in Summit 1, and Summit 1 precinct in Summit Township information will be on my ballot to vote for. I can't vote on Douglas Township. That's reserved for the people in Douglas Township. And so the ballot styles that we use in the election, which I shouldn't be even using so much election language, I guess, but just to help you understand is where I'm coming from, I guess, that with each ballot style, that gives me an opportunity to vote on those things that are mine to vote on. There was a question of whether who do I what was that question? I'll get to it here. But I want to go on to candidates because I don't want to spend too much time on telling you voting information. Like I said, if I don't follow my notes very well, I'll be off somewhere. One question for you, if you are thinking about being a candidate, is should I be a candidate? Do you have good judgment, honesty, maturity, and healthy skepticism? It doesn't hurt to be a skeptic. Are you unafraid to stand out from the crowd and willing to do your homework before the meetings? Before a meeting happens, and you know this certain item, as Tracy talked about, is on the agenda, do your homework. Those are kind of things that you want to do to kind of figure out what's going on and how you can vote on it if it needs to be voted on. Also, you should be running for the right reason, a genuine interest in seeing that the unit of government operates efficiently. How much does it pay? And if that matters to you, you shouldn't be running probably. In fact, this paragraph says, if it matters to you how much it pays, please don't run for office. When I ran for county clerk, I got excited about doing it. I don't remember asking, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even ask how much it paid until I got into the position and was hoping that it did pay. Because I was busy campaigning, I was busy learning what to do to get there. And it was an experience for me. I am glad at this point that I have only had to do that once. That doesn't always happen, but I've been very fortunate in Effingham County to be elected one time, and I haven't had any opposition since then in the position. But if you're asking how much it pays, you probably shouldn't be running for office. Of course, I already kind of threw that out, that school board members don't get paid, but there's a lot of perks for people too. So, and we know about some of those things. Isn't campaigning an expensive chore? It usually is not. When you get to the county level, it could get that way. But at the level of township office, at the level of a municipality office, depending on the size of the municipality, at the level that we're talking about in the consolidated election, most of those offices, it won't be expensive to campaign. When you get to the county level, it could get a little expensive just because you've got 35,000 people to deal with. I shouldn't say it that way. 35,000 people to campaign to, rather than 9,000 or 12,000 or whatever that other body is. So it does make a difference there. And of course, I'm talking total population. But of course, you do want to always campaign to the children too, so they'll convince their parents to vote for you. Those things help. How do I sign up to become a candidate? That's always a good question, because there are people genuinely out there who are interested, who may not realize what they can do to do that. But the best thing is to just call the county clerk's office, and we'll be glad to help anyone out. The county clerk's office is a partisan office as far as being elected. From that point on, if the county clerk doesn't allow you in or doesn't want to talk to you because you're the wrong party, you need to find you a new county clerk. But to sign up to become a candidate, I would always suggest talking to the county clerk, talking to other elected officials you might know, and talk to that local government board you're interested in. If it's school board, talk to the school board, or go to meetings and see how they do business. If you're interested in county board, go to the meetings and see how they do business. Talk to county board members. Talk to the county clerk. Again, we'll be glad to help you out in any way we can to create interest and help you out to understand whether or not you want to go that far to become a candidate. How do I know which local government I'm in? Most people probably know pretty well, but if you are a registered voter, which you should be, you have a voter ID card, or at least if you don't have one, you've been sent one. And we find that a lot. We had one person a few years ago who showed up at a polling place and wanted to vote. This gentleman didn't know which precinct he was in, so they asked if they could see his voter ID card because they didn't have him on his list. They were going to help him out. He didn't have his voter ID card because he thought it was precious enough to keep in his safe deposit box. It's not that precious, but it is another form of ID that you can use elsewhere. It has my signature on it, so that's a really good thing to have in your pocket, you know. But anyway, the voter ID card has listed everything on it that you are eligible to vote on. And if you don't know what it is for sure, call the office and we'll get you taken care of. Plus, if you don't have a voter ID card, we can get a new one sent to you. We send those out every 2 years, whether you want us to or not, because it is state law that we do that. We have to purge our files, and that's the way we do it. But the voter ID card is a really important, I think, an important piece of identification, piece of material for you to keep on your person. The State Board of Elections has a wonderful website. It's elections.il.gov. All you have to do is type in Illinois State Board of Elections. It'll come right up for you. And on their website, you can find all kinds of information about campaigning, about running for office, about your elected officials. You can type in your address and see who your elected officials are, your representatives are, down to the state level. It doesn't go on down to the county level, but it does as far as the state. And so And that is a great resource for candidates. It's a great resource for voters, for the public, but it's a really great resource for candidates. And I did look at that today. They have it up to date. I typed in my address, and they have it completely up to date, which they usually do have. Everything is there. Some election jurisdictions also have your voting information online. Effingham County does not. We are probably a little slower than others. But some jurisdictions actually have where you can go look up your voter registration online within the county website. The average registered voter is eligible to be a candidate for any one of half a dozen local nonpartisan offices. That means you probably live in an area where you could probably pick and choose which office you want to be a candidate for. And this statement, campaigning for most of these low visibility offices is low key. But there are deadlines. There are the procedures to go through, though. One of the procedures is filing your papers for office. In the consolidated election, if you were running as a candidate in the, let's say, the town of Mason, because I'm familiar with there, I grew up there. Don't hold it against me. But the town of Mason, if you were going to run as for a position there, you wanted to become a trustee for the town of Mason, you would file your papers, which would consist of a statement of candidacy, a petition form, a loyalty oath, which is optional, and also a statement of economic interest receipt. You would file those things with your governmental body. The statement of economic interest is a new thing. It's not been out, or it's not been something we've had to do for too many years, but it is a requirement now. And the statement of economic interest, I say that enough times that I can't say it. It has to be filed with the county clerk. The county clerk gives the candidate a receipt, and the candidate has to present that receipt with their papers to the town of Mason or whatever entity they're running for. And there is a timeline for that procedure. Typically, for this election coming up in April, the filing period was in December. For next year in March, the filing period will be, I believe it will be in November. It's typically around Thanksgiving time, which is always a hassle too, because then we have holidays that get in the middle of all of the filing. But it's around Thanksgiving time in November. The first time a person can circulate petitions for next March would be probably about September. And there's a petition requirement for most offices. In the consolidated years, the townships, they caucus, so there's no petition requirement. In other offices, there are petition requirements, such as the town of Mason or any other village typically. So those petition forms have to be signed by registered voters within that area, within that village, that entity, that governmental body. And you have to have a number of signatures. The requirements are all in the statute, and they are really fun to read sometimes because you get 5% and 8%, and then you have to go plus 50, and then you have to go whichever is greater or whichever is lesser, and it gets confusing. But we work those out. And typically, we are the ones in the county clerk's office who have the information, so we're the ones who help you out with how many signatures you need on your petitions. When it comes to next spring, there will be county offices on the ballot in the spring or in next year, and there will be state offices both. All the county offices file with the county clerk. Anything above the county office will be filed with the State Board of Elections. And the State Board of Elections, for instance, will take, I said anything above the county, which would be judges, because judges serve a district, junior colleges, like Lakeland, we're in that college district, they file with the State Board of Elections, and also the Regional Superintendent of Schools, they file with the State Board of Elections because they cover more than just one county, normally. But because most of them do cover more than one, they file there. So if you're interested, even if you're interested in an office that's being elected this year, in 2 years you could have another opportunity to run for that, because there will be trustees in the villages and such in another 2 years. I think some of them are on 2 years, or every other, I should say, offset 2 years from other offices within the villages. And it's the same way with the county. One interesting fact with the county government is that the county boards next year in 2022, all members of the county board will be, I can't say replaced, will be up for election. So it could be a brand new board come December 1st in 2022. We have, I like Tracy's example she gave earlier, because we have a nine member board in the county. So I liked her numbers that she used, because that always helps when somebody uses a number you're familiar with. And so county board will be up, county clerk will be up, county treasurer and county sheriff, and county supervisor of assessments. Those four positions in the county will be elected next year. 9 county board members, and then there will be precinct committeemen, hopefully 37 Republican precinct committeemen and 37 Democratic precinct committeemen. That doesn't happen very often, but I would sure like to see it. Then, because that means your parties are active and your parties are doing things to help encourage people to run, and that's part of their job, is to encourage people to become candidates too. And I'd like to see that. We've never had a full 37 in the years I've been here. I probably never ever, but that's just the way it works. The other part, I hope I covered that well enough. If there are any questions, I will be glad to answer anything. One really good piece of information I wanted to share, and this I copied from someone else. I was talking to Jessica earlier, and yes, we do copy from each other. The county clerks across this state have the same statutes that we follow. We're 102 counties plus the 8 jurisdictions, or 6, I can't remember now. I think might be 6. And we all do the same thing. We all follow the same statutes, but we do it 108 different ways. So we copy from each other to see what works. And if something works, we use it. And so I copied this from somebody else. He says, did you know, no president has ever gotten more than 61% of the vote in the United States of America. I did not know that. But that's pretty interesting to know that Lyndon Johnson in 1964 got 61.1%, I think it was, of the vote across the nation. And of course, he ran that year, and part of the reason he did get that amount was because he ran on the coattails of John F. Kennedy. So that did help him. But then in 2002, Saddam Hussein said he got 100% of the vote. And I looked that statistic up too on the internet today, and that's exactly what it said. I went to a couple different sites, and they both said that that was his claim to fame, that he won 100% of the vote. Well, that'd probably be pretty easy with a gun to your head to get that much. So we know that's kind of what happened there. But what is interesting, and this isn't just Chicago, but this was the statistic he gave. Over 2,000 nonpartisan elected officials really did get 100% of the vote in the Chicago region in 2013 and 2015. It happens in Effingham County too, because there aren't enough people running for office. So you have one candidate for a specific office. He's going to get 100% of the vote. If one person votes and votes for him, that's 100%. And if 10 people vote and 9 people vote for him and one doesn't mark that candidate, those 9 ballots that were cast all went to him. That's 100%. So it happens, and that's one of the ideas behind this candidate forum, to encourage people to vote, to vote. I'm sorry, to become candidates. We do want you to vote too, but to become candidates. The other issue that I'm supposed to cover a little bit of is campaign disclosure. And I am really happy. I can't remember which year it was, but basically campaign disclosure became a part of the State Board of Elections duties instead of the county clerk's duties. We used to have to keep campaign disclosure records in our office. And now they are basically all filed with the State Board of Elections, and it just makes it so much easier for us. But campaign disclosure covers candidates of all kinds. The Illinois Campaign Disclosure Act applies to candidates, individuals, groups of persons, or any organizations, political or otherwise, who have accepted contributions or made expenditures or independent expenditures in excess of $5,000 within a 12-month period in support of or in opposition to a candidate or candidates for public office or any question of public policy to be submitted to voters. And number 2, who have received or made expenditures in excess of $5,000 within a 12-month period for electioneering communication. Or number 3, who have made independent expenditures in excess of $5,000 within a 12-month period. When I ran for county clerk in 2002, I believe the threshold was $3,500. It's good they raised it to $5,000, but $5,000 isn't hard to get to when you run a campaign. A contribution is cash, loans, or anything of value. For instance, in 2002, when I ran for county clerk, my aunt and uncle were all about it. And I loved them for it because it helped. But the problem for the public was they put a big picture of me in front of their laundromat. I don't know how many of you know Hirtzel Coin Laundry, but it was on Fayette Avenue. And they had this big, I don't know how large it was, poster with my picture on it. It said, "Vote for Kerry." And I appreciated it. It wasn't pretty, but I appreciated it. We used that thing in parades, and I didn't pay a cent for that. But that was considered an in-kind donation because they paid for it, they had it made, and I had to claim that on my campaign disclosure forms to the state board. And those are things that you have to pay attention to. Committees, you can form a committee for your campaign. I formed a committee. I was the president of the committee, and I was the secretary of the committee. My wife said, "There you go, you do that." So I did. But there are different committees, and there's different, not really rules, but there's just different things that you might have a committee for. You might have a committee for an initiative that's on the ballot that somebody wants to promote or somebody wants to campaign against. And those things, even if you're spending that kind of money, $5,000 or more, you have to report that under campaign disclosure laws. And the campaign disclosure laws are long. There is a lot of forms. You have to do a statement of organization, which is the D1 form. And the great thing about this, it's all right there on the State Board of Elections website. And I have no problems with people coming in and asking me to help them with it and things like that too. We are certainly glad to do that. But once you've done this, you're probably more familiar with it than I am, because I haven't done one since 2002, and some of the things have changed. But you have to change, or you have to list contributions that were given to you on your campaign disclosure forms. You have to list what the purpose was. Here's one that's an example, and this gentleman had to list, it wasn't a gentleman, it was a group. They had to list who their donors were, and these are different donors of the Whig Party that are donating to this Whig House Interest Group. Of course, we know we don't have Whigs anymore, but that's a good example to use. There's quarterly reporting. There are requirements to report when you get closer to election day, and you have to, for instance, it used to be 7 days, I think, and I'm not positive about this now, but within 7 days you received a campaign contribution, you had to report that within 2 days. And after election day, for a couple of days after, if it's within a couple of days of election day, you got to get it reported right away too.
5 days.
5 days?
More than $1,000.
There you go.
Then
Yeah, there, and it has to do with the amount of money that you get. Thank you much. And there are all, and you probably have been experienced with this. There are all kinds of schedules that you have to follow, and you don't have to do them all. Most campaigns don't have to do them all, but there are different schedules of expenditures and investments that you make, and debts and obligations that you make and have throughout your campaign that you have to report. So campaign financing is really an interesting thing. The other thing, within the county clerk's office takes care of raffle license if the county has a raffle ordinance. Effingham County does have. But when it comes to elections, you get your raffle ordinance or your raffle licenses from the State Board of Elections. There's an application and tells you how to conduct your raffles. You have to send in reports for your raffles. You have to send in reports for in-kind donations. Just so many different things that you have to be aware of when you go to do campaign disclosure. They have a campaign disclosure calendar and tells you when you are to report any information that you have from your campaign. And as I said, probably next year you'll see, or you'll know, or if you're a candidate this year, you will find out you don't have to do so much here because you probably won't spend $5,000. Next year, as a county candidate, or even a county board candidate possibly, or when you get to state offices, state representative, state senatorial districts, those people, they will spend more money because they have more people to more ground to cover and more people to try to contact and say, hey, vote for me. So I hope I've given you a little bit of information that it will help. Are there any questions that I can maybe answer? Don't expect me to go in here because it won't happen. Anybody? In the county board?
County or the town, is there somewhere a novice would be good to start out with, to figure it out?
Probably the best place to start out investigating for a specific position would be attending their meetings. As Tracy said, those are open meetings. They're public meetings. Those are really good places. As far as the Effingham County Board, which I'm the secretary of, being the clerk of the county, we do a lot more than elections in our office. And that's something we always try to use, or I always try to tell our students when we meet students and talk to students, that it's not just me as the county clerk. I have 9 staff members that do 99% of the work. And but as the clerk, I have to attend the county board meeting once a month. They also have committee meetings, and that committee meeting calendar gets put out once a month. And if you go to a committee meeting, you'll see more work done there than at the county board itself, because there's more discussion and there's more opportunity for them to discuss. I shouldn't say opportunity, but they take more time to discuss at a committee meeting than they do at the county board meeting, because once it gets to the county board meeting, typically it's been through discussion and they don't always spend as much time on it. That's not to say that you can't be there to ask questions, because as Tracy said, on the agenda, there is a requirement for them to give opportunity for the public to speak, even if it's not on something that's on the agenda. And so they do that. So I think that'd be my suggestion. If you know when you want to get involved in a specific village, government, park district, county board, school board, whatever it is, attend some meetings. I think that's probably the best first step. And if you ever want to talk to me, I'm available. Our office is always open. Bob Bierman, the former county clerk who just passed away last June, he was a dear. He was good. And he had a little slogan: "You are always welcome in the county clerk's office." And we still use that today because he told me I could. And so we use that on all of our stationery, on our envelopes and such.
It goes back to Lawrence Sir.
Okay, I wondered about that too, and you would know that, Mike. Thank you. Lawrence Sir was before Bob, and so Lawrence used that same slogan. And I try I try to always accept people as they are when they come in the office. There are times when, personalities conflict, and mine does with other people once in a while. I know it's hard to believe, but it does. So anytime you have questions for us, please come by and ask or call us. Thank you.